Shut up, Evan. Shut up, Evan. Shut up, Evan.
Because the on-camera element completely changes the tenor of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We're cheating out right now. There's like an awareness of the camera.
Right.
And so it's just not the same as like by design, like what I intended this to be. This is morphed into like a different entity, which I'm okay with.
This has been, in my experience lately, to let go of rigid attachment as much as possible, right? To like really not be in any way adhered to the way I think things should be.
Yes.
And when that happens, I think, it generally opens up for a lot of possibility. So It's great that you're doing something new or that you might not have expected,
Can I relate this to something recently? Because I've been on a 10,000 steps a day journey,
Mm-hmm.
and I track it. I'm a little psychotic about it. Like I will land from a flight and immediately hit the ground running.
Great.
And I keep it on the same time zone. So when I travel to Paris and LA quite frequently, and so like if I go to Paris, I have to like literally figure out how to get on that.
And it might be 3 a.m.
It's never like that crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's more that when I land on the flight home from Paris, I got to immediately get off the plane and like get to step in.
Just get booking.
But I recently, I went to bed with like 9,978 steps. So I'd broken, I was on like a 200 plus day streak.
Oh, wow.
And mentioning rigid attachments, I was so attached to this idea that was like, I must get 10,000 steps a day. And I just had this moment where I just was like, it is what it is. Like, it's all, I've put forth the effort for this long. I will continue to put forth the effort. I cannot get lost in this number not meeting a certain metric.
Totally. Though it is what it is to me is, that's my least favorite. It's probably my least favorite phrase. Just, it's considered a thought terminating cliche. It's fine to like, but that's the reaction it elicits to me is like, yeah, it is what it is. And it's a piece of the broader lesson I think that we're talking about and that you noticed and felt in that thing. Like, it's where you can let go of things outside of your sphere of influence and outside of your need for control or expectation. It's like that. I've just tried to loosen that up for myself a lot lately, and it's been helpful.
I feel like this has been like an ongoing pursuit of yours, though, for some time.
It's true. We've known each other a long time. We talk about this kind of thing when we see each other.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Zachary Quinto, welcome back to Shut Up, Evan.
Thank you. I've not been to the new studio.
You last appeared on this podcast, can you believe it, in 2021.
Yeah, we did it on Zoom.
On Zoom.
This is quite different, and I prefer it.
Happy to
and I
have
could
you.
walk from my house.
Yeah, you're very close to here. Yeah. How is that beautiful house?
It's great. Thank you. It's really nice. I'm happy. I'm so happy to be back in it. I just came home for a couple of days. I listened to amazing music and walked around the city for 2 days. It's just so revitalizing to come back, to be in my own space.
Was Rosalia's Lux on your playlist?
From start to finish. Yeah. And yeah, it's like you'd agree, I think it's a seminal work. It really tapped into something. I've been hearing about it. I've been, catching the vibe of it, certainly. I've noticed people being particularly stirred by it in a positive way. And so it was on my radar, but it was kind of further out. And then one of my castmates, John Clarence Stewart, who I've really enjoyed getting to know and work with, left me a video message yesterday, in fact, and said, "Have you heard this album yet?" Because I had told him about the Lily Allen album, so we were doing a little album exchange, and he dove into that, and so he was returning the favor at the precise best moment when I was about to leave the house and venture, like walking for 30 minutes, and as soon as he said, it's amazing, I turned the video off, and then I just pressed play on the album right then and there, and I listened to it probably 3 times since then. I was really emotional listening to it, and I think it's tapping into a frequency that we need to hear vibrate as a people. It's like art as healing. It's like really, to me, something that's more than just about even the quality of the music, but the spirit of it and what's underneath it and what comes through that spectacular talent, that vessel that is so amazing.
Yeah.
So I have hope. I feel like art is hope, and like they're just like hearing that, and Lily's album I thought was really provocative, and Also the new Tame Impala. There's good music right now.
Yeah.
There's really good music, and it's been a long time for me since I felt there's good music.
Have you dipped a toe into Robin's dopamine?
Not yet, but that's also, it's like they come in waft.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like there's energetically between Lily and Rosalia and Robin, I too have been like, wow, good music is back.
Yeah.
And not that it wasn't present.
Right.
But
You know, my relationship to music had kind of not quite atrophied, but diminished. And it's been such an important part of different parts of my life, and for whatever reason, I just haven't felt as connected to an album as I have these last 3 albums in, like, you know, the last couple of months. I like to listen to an album also start to finish, so I don't like to not be able to see it through.
So Lily Allen is going to be performing West End Girl in full, chronologically, at the Mighty Hoopla Festival. And I'm sure there's a precedent here of some kind, but I was like, wow, the thought of these works that I think are devised to be listened to start to finish, the idea that they would be presented in concert.
I saw Joni Mitchell do Both Sides Now, you know, in its entirety. I think that happens. Like, I then heard Brittany Carlisle do all of Blue from start to finish. She's so incredible. So there's amazing music. But lately I've felt like a little bit like I was desiring connection that I've now found and that I'm revisiting as we speak, rotating those albums through.
I want to talk about theater.
Yes.
You've done a lot of theater. You love the theater. I love the theater. We connect on the theater.
Yeah, we do.
And I want to start by talking about the state of theater because it's something that's been on my mind quite a bit. There was an article recently in the New York Times. The story was titled, "The Broadway Musical is in Trouble." And it cited, among other statistics, that none of the musicals that opened last season have made a profit. Plays it mentioned are faring better, but the ticket prices for both increasingly make this an inaccessible art form. I'm wondering from your perspective what you see as both the problem and what the solution might be.
Welcome. You know, I thank you for the softball questions. I don't know. I think on one level, from my observation, we're seeing it in so many different aspects of our culture and our society right now, is the clash between capitalism and these kind of almost spasms of capitalism that have really taken over so many different aspects of how we relate to one another, and, you know, the outcome of the election and the energy that has whipped up to a degree that has been incredibly alienating and also, I think, galvanizing at the same time. And I think that's reflected in this collision between intention and expectation, intention and, you know, the drive to feed this frenzied storm that is really just about something that is kind of burning out. And, like, how are we going to navigate that? We're faced with unprecedented challenges existentially to our civilization right now in ways that we have never experienced before. No one on the planet has ever experienced, between the confluence of climate change and AI, like what we're about to witness unfold. And there is no, you know, posturing or culture warring or you know, rhetoric spinning that's going to change the eventuality of that. It simply is happening now. There is no denial will take you so far, and beyond that place, you're only going to be met with the truth. And so, like, we're seeing that everywhere we turn right now. And we're seeing it in art. And that's what brings me back to, like, art is hope, but art is fighting for its identity again in a way that it hasn't for a long time. And that's true of all different mediums. And with the theater, I think it is a challenging time. There's a lot of destabilization. Last season, I think, like, there was this, you know, there were a lot of really big, flashy people on Broadway doing amazing work, and it drove the ticket prices to a place that was really, you know, the pendulum swung in the other direction. So where do we find, you know, accessibility to those voices again? And so I think one of the things that's happening is there's a lot more unconventional theater. You know, there's stuff happening off Broadway. There's stuff happening in a way that it has often, but it has more kind of resonance, and people are starting to see that there's an equanimity that can come from letting go of what you think theater has to be in Broadway with a big, huge star, and you can make something that is actually challenging.
I'm curious because I love theater so much and I love Broadway, and it was such an aspiration in my youth, something I really followed. And now adult me is really interested in like the business model of Broadway. Is there a meeting of the minds to say like, what are we doing wrong right now that we need to sort of reimagine?
I think it will find itself. Like I do think that would be ideal scenario where people sit down and be like, what are we doing wrong? How can we, I don't know, ... whatever the sort of pervasive need for the art form is in that moment. You know, people resist. There's a lot of resistance to that kind of change, especially when money's involved, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but there's really interesting producers out there that are doing work unconventionally, you know, and doing it on the fly and seeing where it takes them. And I'm interested in that. I'm kind of like, who is that and what are they doing? And hopefully I really can't wait to be back on stage, you know, so hopefully something will materialize soon.
Fran Lebowitz was recently asked if she prefers Broadway or off-Broadway.
She said, I don't go to the theater much. It's the one thing that I consider I'm too young for, right?
Look at you finishing my sentences for me, which I thought was a really provocative statement, as Fran is wont to make, in that I say this from a place of love. I love the theater. I think there is a perception to many that theater is either for the uber rich or for the old. And I think that there are a number of instances in which that's been tested in a really exciting way. I mean, I think about Spring Awakening and the idea that there was like a Facebook group that really galvanized young people and Student Rush and all of that stuff. And so like there are instances, certainly, but I'm wondering what you make of that comment, both as a theater maker and a theater consumer.
I mean, I think it is inimitably Fran Lebowitz to say something like that. I just, you know, yes, that insight is profound and funny, but also, I don't know, is it entirely true? I feel like there are audiences and young people that are inspired by the theater. And I think there, you know, as we are facing the existential threat of AI and what it means to our industry and the, you know, interpretive art of performance, theater is a place where you will always be able to go and find community and find collective catharsis and experience and inspiration and joy, and you know, and those spaces are going to become more and more important if we're going to hold on to the aspect of our humanity that got us this far and not completely surrender it to, you know, the algorithm-driven models that we're being faced with, kind of making huge impacts on our culture. So hopefully it works in theater's favor, that it has to find the level. But if you zoom out, that's what's happening everywhere. So we're all going to have to find that level between money and art, you know, and I guess I classify art as part of survival.
Yeah. You have a lot of friends and colleagues who make theater, and I'm sure they want you to come see their stuff. I'm sure sometimes it's amazing. I'm sure other times it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sort of go-to for how you operate when someone that you love asks you what you thought of something that they made when you might be a little bit more mid on it?
Well, it depends on the degree of intimacy that I share with that person. I try to just be as honest as I can be. Yeah, I mean, I just try to read a situation, and I think I'm pretty good at like dissembling my true feelings if I know that that's what's required for the relationship at that time. And it is an inevitability with any art form and expression. Like, it's not for everyone. You know, there's always something that I could acknowledge and lift up and shine a light on that's like, cool, you know, I took this from it, or I just try not to overdo it.
Yes.
It was amazing. You know, I don't want to like over dramatize.
What is your relationship with criticism, both with regard to your work, but also in general?
Well, when you say criticism, do you mean like reviews?
I think I mean
response
both.
to a work? Okay, so with regard to critical response to work, I stopped reading reviews entirely. It really changed my relationship, particularly with theater. As an actor in a situation where I'm trying to create authenticity and create, why would I expose what I've been working on to any one single person's relationship to it and allow that single person's relationship to it to change or morph it in any way? That's not serving anybody. from my experience. And it has come from experience because I did read reviews when I was younger. But I just don't care, really. If the people that I love and trust, I always have a group of those people that I invite into my work at any, earlier point. But those are the people that I turn to and the people I'm working with mostly.
Do critics matter?
I think they really matter in the theater. I think they matter in film and TV to an extent, but there's a whole marketing machine behind film and television that is about the corporate interests beyond, that's like, it's operating on so many different levels that there's a mechanism in place that's just like going to churn out attention. So, a review can make or break something, but I think in the theater, it really, if you're at an opening night party and a show gets, torn apart, like the mood of the party changes in real time and people like suddenly aren't there anymore, so not that I would know, but it is, I'm just kidding. But it is, it's like very immediate with the theater. That's my take on like critical response to work. And then in life, always take criticism, always hear criticism, always be able to show up for it and like not be reactive to it. If it's presented in a constructive way, I feel like that's probably one of the biggest ways that we can learn and kind of grow and change if we're gonna change, if there's willingness for change. How do people respond, Always looking for my part in everything.
I think there needs to be a referendum on the understanding of the critic's role, in the sense that I am largely pro-critic, especially with my background in journalism. I feel like there are standard bearers that exist in all industries, and I think critics are one of them. However, I think that we've moved to this place where we have given a heft to influencer culture that allows some people with large platforms and loud opinions to come in and present an opinion as criticism. And I know that there's a Venn diagram between the two. I understand that. And it's such where I know, for instance, a lot of the trades recently, they invite influencers to screenings who often present really glowing reviews because they're really excited to be invited into the room. And then I noticed that the trades will pick up that and do like a headline being like first reaction to X thing. It's taking away the dignity of what real critics do and passing the baton to just anyone and saying anyone with an opinion and a platform should be able to weigh in.
It's a corruption of the agreement. What you're saying is that it diminishes the impact of actual critical thought, which I think is a valid position. And yeah, like the journalistic history of criticism is impressive, and I don't dismiss it at all as a form of expression and like discourse initiation. But for me personally, I just feel like there's no good that can come of that for me, one way or another. It's just I've seen it for what it is, and it's for other people, and let it be, and hopefully, the critical response to things has a positive impact on it. But I can't. It's I have to see that that's beyond my scope.
I'll pick a topic that I'm interested in, a film, movie, TV show, and I love to read every review. And then to try and like synthesize the greater points that are being made across the board and see, these are like the three themes that I'm seeing the most people take away from it. And they're not necessarily like the qualitative aspects. So like, this is good, this is bad. But it's like, this is the actor that keeps getting named, called out in all the reviews. You know what I mean? Because my opinion with art is often very malleable. I'll come away from it. I'm someone who has really strong opinions from the jump. And then I like to revisit things a second, third, fourth time. And sometimes I can find myself on the complete other side of it.
I, like you, tend to have strong reactions to things. Specific examples? I was not interested in, like, a long time ago in Taylor Swift at all. Like, I just had some sort of inherent, I don't know why. And then I really came around. In lyrically, I went through a real phase of, like, opening up to her music and immersing myself in it and really... Wow, I had such a, what was that base? Like, where was that coming from? Resistance. Like, I'm not interested. I don't want to listen. And then there was such value for me personally that was generated by that music. Casey Musgraves also, I had that relationship to. It's just not really, it doesn't speak to me as a genre kind of idea, something. I don't know. I just had a preconception that was erroneous about both of them, for example. And I've come to really value them. And go in and out, right? Like, so now it's part of, it's not like I'm there now. I haven't stayed with Taylor's music as much, but I respect it. You know, I think it's really it's powerful.
I want to talk some more about producing and executive producing. You've done both. You've been producing since the beginning of your career, if I have that correct.
Sort of. I mean, I started a production company in like 2008, around the time I was doing Heroes. So yeah, early.
But then I noticed recently you've been doing executive producing credits. And so, one, can you define the difference between producing and executive producing?
They're different for film and TV. In television, an executive producer is a higher credit, actually, or it's like a little bit more involved. It's somebody who has been involved oftentimes with the development of a show. Producing directors have executive producer credits often. Showrunners always do. Lead actors can get credits as well. And so an executive producer is somebody that has a little bit more of a connection to a TV program, whereas a producer on a TV show might be one step removed. And it's the opposite for film. A producer is the person who really is the engine of getting it made. An executive producer is somebody who maybe was helpful in getting money for the movie or getting some aspect of production together that helped them make the movie. But it's sort of complicated and a little bit ambiguous depending on the project, but that's a kind of general overview.
And with a couple of your last film projects of late, I've noticed that you've been working with young, up-and-coming directors, independent films. Is that something that you've been actively seeking out?
I mean, it's always been true from my producing life when I started my company, and our projects were often with first-time directors. I find there's something really lovely about seeing something about an artist's voice or a filmmaker's vision and then helping to amplify that and seeing where it goes from there. So, I did it with this director, Delaney Buffett, and her writing partner, Katie Corwin, who made a film called Adult Best Friends. I met Delaney and Katie through Marie Nikolova, who works at my production company as my development executive. They went to college together. They're very good friends, and there was something really refreshing about their voice, and so we came on board to develop, and I executive produced that movie, and Marie really produced that movie. Like, she learned on the ground how to produce movies. Actually, was reading books about independent film production while she was like making calls on set. So it was a really cool thing to support and like watch happen. And I did a little role in it, and it was really fun. And so, yeah, I think young voices, new perspectives is an interesting place to start, and then where it goes is anybody's game. You can figure that out as it unfolds.
I want to ask a little bit about politics, because I know that you're someone who, like me...
Can I have another bottle of water?
Or
Please.
wine. I know that you're someone who follows the news regularly. Am I wrong about that?
I've made a conscious effort lately to not, actually, But continue, we can, yeah.
Well, I ask because I have been thinking a lot about the role that actors or creators play in the ecosystem of politics. And I was really prompted around this thought around a quote that Jennifer Lawrence gave during a recent interview where she was asked about her perspective on sharing her opinions on Trump. And she said, quote, "I don't really know if I should share. The first Trump administration was so wild and just, how can we let this stand? I felt like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But as we've learned, election after election, celebrities do not make a difference whatsoever on who people vote for. So then what am I doing? I'm just sharing my opinion on something that's going to add fuel to a fire that's ripping the country apart." And you've been in this industry for a minute. You know how these things work. And I think the tenor has shifted in terms of the expectation that people have around celebrities speaking out. I think there was a very different vibration around 2016, an expectation. But I'm wondering, is this something you think about, your role in this ecosystem and even what that ecosystem is? Softballs.
I really appreciate that. I feel like my experience has been that I've zoomed out a bit, I think, for myself, or I've made the effort to zoom out and realize that like it used to be that vibration of like make an impact by turning outward. And I think from my experience that we're moving into a time where the greater impact can be made by turning inward. And like, it's not about espousing my beliefs or advocating for what I think should be happening in the political landscape, over which I only have a significant amount of control to a certain point when I go to the ballot box. Like that's really what it comes down to for many, many people. But I think that if there's an opportunity to make some kind of change, that if it can come from within one's experience rather than from without one's experience, that to me is the primary kind of crux of the matter at the moment. And politically, it's like we could sit here all day and talk about the ways in which it's unconscionable, but to what end? And to me, it's just not about that anymore. It's just not, it's these shifts that we're experiencing right now are truly civilizational. Like, it's like, to me, the magnitude of it is incomprehensible to a certain extent at this point. I think we'll look back on this time in 20, 25 years, if we're all still here in this same configuration, and recognize that we're living through an inflection point that is, maybe never, it's unprecedented in the history of our civilization. What a time to be alive, and for all that means, the horror and the absolute joy of it, it's remarkable, I think, but it's really overwhelming. It's an overwhelming time. So I understand that sentiment, and I also just feel like I think I have more power closer to myself right now.
Has it been an effort for you to figure out how to disengage from the vacuum that can be the news cycle?
The disengagement with social media is the hardest piece of that, because I think there's also something that's been happening in the algorithms where social media to me has become much more insidiously influential over us and our kind of like insatiable and automatic relationship to it. It's almost like the equivalent to like pumping some, scents into the air in the casinos in Vegas that keep you sitting at the slot machines. It's like the digital equivalent of that to me, is that I've found, I've had a relationship to social media for a decade or more, but it's changed and not for the better. And I think like the way that AI is influencing that already, and the kind of pulling back the curtain on the phones listening to us and just like feeding you what it hears you talking about in like ways that used to be like, oh my God, can you imagine the coincidence of it? And now it's like, well, of course, like, what do you mean?
Well, it's also interesting how this relates to the industry that you work in, because, let's take social media, for instance. It's a huge part of the job of being an actor these days.
Different
It's
now,
become,
right?
in the past, you would be used as part of the marketing, but these days, you exist as part of the marketing with this extension of social media.
Right.
But I wonder if the effects of that is sort of turning social media, which is meant to sort of just be, I think by design, fun and frivolous,
right,
and turning it into business.
Marketing machine. So such a really great observation. And my own Instagram is a complete encapsulation of that, what you just said. And if I look back on my Instagram 5-7 years ago, it was, snapshots of my daily life. Literally all that's on my Instagram for the past probably 2 years is like promotional stuff for my Instagram stories. I do more occasionally, and I haven't been much lately, but if I'm going to do it, I'll do it there. But, more sort of catch a glimpse of my life. But the main grid, as it were, has really become dedicated to and part of the reason that I have this experience of the insidiousness of social media increasing as of late is I've really wanted to get it off, right, my phone, and not have such an automatic response to it. And I did that, but then I would have to go on every Monday, which I have to do today actually, and post for Brilliant Minds, and it airs Monday nights at 10 p.m. on NBC. And so when I would do that, it would be back, and I would just feel the when it first started, I would just put it on my phone on Monday, put all the stuff up I needed to, and then delete it. But then I would put it on my phone on Monday, and then I'd get home on Monday and forgot to have taken it off my phone, and then I'll look at it, and then it's Wednesday, and I'm like, oh, I got to delete it. And I just feel it's like gnawing at the door, of whatever it is that I'm going through at any given time. And I'm just trying to, it's there, you know, it's happening. This comes back to this idea of like it's all happening.
But I think it's good what you're talking about is sort of like giving yourself best practices.
Uh-huh.
I think just thinking about these things is important. And I especially think because the proliferation of social media, the expectation around it as marketing,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to like sort of check in with, especially creatives, and sort of say, is this part of the bargain of what I wanted? And I'm wondering how this relates to, let's go back to like Star Trek Heroes time, when you're beginning to have that hyper visibility. How did that feel for you, having people wanting to know you, not just see your work, but wanting to know, yeah, did that do anything to your psyche?
I made a kind of bargain with myself when that time was happening because it was such a heady time, you know, everything was really changing. And I tried to, I just really made this commitment that like I wasn't going to let exposure of myself affect my own experience of life and living the way I want to live my life. And so I really did try to adhere to that. Moving to New York was a big part of that too. It allows for that here, you know.
I do think that is so true. We just had Lizzie Kaplan
Oh,
on the podcast,
adore.
and she moved to Fort Greene from Los Angeles and talked about the fact that like there are just ways in which this city allows you to live a quote unquote normal life, especially when you're raising kids. That is just not the case in Los Angeles. Not to say it doesn't exist there.
Don't get me wrong, I love LA. I really love LA. I lived there for 12 years. This
Do
year,
you still have your place there?
I don't anymore. I've lived here now 13 years, so 1 year longer than I lived in LA. And I really value them both. I love both these cities for different reasons.
Yeah.
But New York does just allow, and in the pace of it, you know, what the city offers you here, and with minimal effort, with only effort required being really stepping outside, is pretty unparalleled, you know, anywhere.
What are your thoughts on the state of New York post-pandemic? I mean, obviously, like the city has bounced back, of course, but it's different. It feels different for me. And so I'm just always wondering for people that have lived here for quite some time.
Yeah, I've lived in my same apartment now for 11 years. Yeah, I mean, look, they've built a 20-story building a block from my house in the last 5 years. You know, literally where there was a 2-story bar with, you know, rich history in the neighborhood, B-Bar, you know, was razed and replaced with a 20-story office building, you know. But New York, it's so much more resilient than, you know, one period of time, one era, one architectural movement, one sort of rezoning for capitalist greed purposes. You know, it endures, and the spirit endures, and the things that people came to this part of the world to find still exist. In that, you know, sometimes they may be a little less resonant. They can be more like whispers, but they're still there. And I think that connection to space and time is, you know, it transcends any one period. And that's what's given me some hope in the context of this like unfathomable pendulum swing in a direction that just feels so incomprehensible is the only word I can think of, as to be absurd. You know, it's shocking. It's really utterly, you know, you almost couldn't make it up. You know, it's Shakespearean. It's so much more than just about political or cultural outlook, you know.
Do you think great art will come from this time
Yes.
period in terms of art that reflects on this time period?
I do. I think we're in for we're in for a creative, like if we think of expression and art and how performing art and, you know, theater and film and television has historically connected us.
Yeah.
And part of that process is about to be commandeered by a technology over which we will have minimal control. And so how we create and what we create, the paradigm is completely shifting. It's already shifting. And that's where it feels like the vitality of theater and the immediacy of theater is going to be a beacon again in a way that it hasn't had to be for a really long time. And what that looks like in the business of it and the model of it, that's what's being forged right now. People are trying to figure that out. And you have Audible buying the Minetta Lane and A24 buying the Cherry Lane, and people buying up all these little spaces, and Seaview opening their amazing space, and the Lortel doing these incredible actors coming in and doing plays for limited runs, Andrew Scott, and like amazing things are happening, worth fueling, worth sort of like putting some air on, I guess, to ignite it. It's a bad metaphor, but you know what I mean.
No, you got there. Now, you play a gay character on Brilliant Minds. You've played many gay characters throughout your career, beginning with, I think, Angels in America.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Sure. No, I played Tori Spelling's best friend in So Notorious. Sasson. What was the character's name? Pardon
me for omitting. It's like I went right to Angels in America and I had So Notorious right there. And you know what? I was going to go through this whole interview without bringing that show up, but thank you for
I'm glad.
Bringing it up.
I'm glad.
Because in your oeuvre, I think it matters. I think it. I do. Anyway, but you've played a lot of these gay characters, and I have a hunch, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were told early on in your career that maybe playing so many gay roles could be potentially limiting. And my hunch comes just from things I've heard other gay actors express about things that they've heard from agents or casting directors or what have you. And yet, I think something that you've proven countless times is that being a gay character is a facet of the character, but the character is not just the gay character. And I'm wondering how much consciousness you've given to that in terms of navigating your career, or if this is just the roles that you were drawn to and a lot of those characters happen to be gay.
I would just say that I started playing more gay characters once I came out, or characters who are identified by their sexuality, which is, grist for the mill of the conversation about how people are seen and how actors are allowed to identify and what stories they're allowed to tell. And, it's an ongoing discourse in many different ways and areas of our business. But yeah, I started playing more gay characters, and I think I had a choice to either be resistant to that or just find the most interesting gay characters that I could find. And if representation matters, then I get to do it and be representative in some way. So then it's even more of a gift.
On the discussion of representation mattering, GLAAD reports that nearly half, this is pretty shocking to me. Why is your hand like that?
I don't know. I'm just anticipating where this is going. Softball questions.
GLAAD reports that nearly half of the LGBTQ plus characters in TV in 2024 to 2025 will not return in 2026 due to cancellations, limited series, or other factors. And I'm wondering what you make of that, and if you see this as a pendulum swing or a heel turn.
What's the difference?
So the pendulum swing would be like, this is the current trend, but eventually there will be many more LGBTQ plus, characters on television, or are we literally turning away from them and saying that was a moment?
On television specifically?
Television specifically. Does that statistic shock you?
Well, does anything shock me with regard to things like that and statistics and data? And corporations are driven by the bottom line, and there is a significant amount of consumer power in the stories that are told. So I think depending on the platform, corporations are, maybe there's not as many stories, but corporations are wise to not alienate a whole faction of people that would be interested in stories that have to do with the LGBTQ community. And whether, that becomes more of a consideration balanced on audience, maybe that's something we're seeing in TV. And I mean, did these shows get canceled because of the gay characters? That's a question. No, I doubt it,
But will anyone try and make that out to be the narrative is sort of the question.
I see.
Maybe not. I'm just putting it out there as a thought pattern.
I don't know. I think you'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and see, what was the reason given for something. But I don't know. I mean, we got to fight to tell our stories. I know that. I feel so grateful to be a part of a show that, I'm the main character on a show that is an openly gay character. That's, I feel it's an honorable distinction for me right now in this political climate.
Well, not only that, but a television show on network, right? And it's not to disparage streaming in any sense whatsoever, but I think the thing about network television that matters, and it was so important to me growing up, is that network television comes into your home. You can just have the TV on and network television appears, right? It's literally as you're clicking channel to channel. Streaming, you have to make a more conscious decision to seek it out, right? Yeah. And I know that part of being young for me, how I found Buffy the Vampire Slayer was literally just clicking through the channels. The discoverability component that I think was so foundational to my youth and the pride I felt in finding something was on network television. And so I think that not only to be an out gay character on television 2025, I think that's amazing, but also for the visibility of network TV.
Yeah, I haven't had an experience like this for such a long time, doing, you know, a network hour-long drama and a almost full season order. You know, we're doing 20 episodes this season.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of episodes.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I miss it.
Thank God. I'm feeling very grateful for it, for sure. I really, the consistency and the immersion has been really fulfilling for me on so many different levels.
I also just I'm a big proponent. I grew up in an age of 22 to 24 episode seasons.
Yes.
And I think getting this time to really not only develop the character, but develop our parasocial bond with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll mention her again because she's played such a big role in my life, but like Buffy is a character for me that I grew up with her. Had that just been streamed and dropped all at once, I don't think my relationship to the show would be the same. So I think, going back to the top of our conversation around I'm really interested in trends and data around this industry, I really hope to return to these longer seasons and these weekly drops because I think it actually can indoctrinate viewers in a way that's more meaningful.
Yeah, well, the bond gets to form over more time, generally speaking.
Did you have a Buffy growing up?
I was a big fan of 2020.
Love 2020. Barbara Walters, invoke that name.
Barbara Walters, R.I.P.
Miss her.
Yeah. Did you watch that documentary about Barbara Walters?
I did. I'm deep in the Barbara lore, and I've read Audition, and I found it a little surface.
Right.
It wasn't presenting much new,
Right.
and I think there were a couple critical talking heads that were missing.
Uh-huh.
I think there's just very clear with Barbara that there's some church and state around how she is spoken about.
Right.
But love her, and I think that I wouldn't do what I do
Sure.
if it weren't for Barbara Walters.
I feel you.
You said you didn't have a Buffy. Yours was 2020. I'll allow that answer. But was there a film or piece of theater that you saw at a young age that really unlocked the idea that art has a power?
I was 13. I had started performing in Pittsburgh, from where we both hail. I was doing the Civic Light Opera, the Mini Stars. Civic Light Opera Mini Stars was the name of the performance group that I was a part of.
Did I know you were a mini star?
I don't know. You know of the Mini Stars?
Of
though.
course I do.
So
the mythical Mini Stars.
I was a Mini Star. Can you? I know you're
No,
having
I
a reaction.
No. That's so just incongruous to everything I know about you.
I understand, but it is true. It's how I started. It's a long story, but I was a mini star, and as a mini star, you got sort of if they needed for the main stage production kids or whatever, you were up for that. So we were involved in the main stage productions, and we got invited to the dress rehearsals of the ones that were just happening through the summer. And I remember going to the dress rehearsal for Sweeney Todd, and sitting in the on the floor of the first row of the mezzanine with my arms up on the balustrade, and leaning over and with my chin on my hands and watching the beginning of the show, and everything's starting, and the organ music is playing at the top of the show, and I'm riveted. I mean, it's sort of weirdly church, and I just hadn't heard anything like it. And then that work whistle pierces the sort of creepy crawly organ introduction, and it sent me back. It threw me. I was so startled by it. I didn't expect it. And from that moment on, I knew this was what was possible, and then I've seen Sweeney Todd more than any other show.
Did you see the recent revival?
Yeah.
It existed. Would we ever see you as Sweeney?
I mean, it's the one thing that I've said since I was 13 years old that I want to do.
Okay.
So yeah, I would love to do that.
Let's will it into being.
I don't know. I think it would be really spectacular from a creative standpoint, challenging, and it's just such a piece that anyway, I would love to make it happen. So you will help me.
Great.
You'll come.
You are 48 years old. I'm wondering.
How dare you tell people?
How is 48 for you?
It's a trip, you know? It's definitely like I feel like, yeah, the journey is been full of lessons, you know, and not all of them are easy. And I've really come to see the value of, you know, staying in it with myself, like staying in it and doing the hard work, you know, because it's the only way that I feel like I can appreciate and like really understand the whole picture and not just the thing that is right in front of me or the thing that I want to have be right in front of me, or, you know. So I definitely feel like I can look at my life now in these cycles of expansion and contraction, or, you know, realization and kind of separation, or, you know, I don't know, like they're different. And so now I feel like I'm at this place where I'm just looking at it all from a totally different point of view, and what's ahead of me and what's behind me, and the balance of that, you know, is in the process of shifting. And that's, I mean, it's really, it's magical and terrifying. And, you know, and if I can lean into the fear of uncertainty and the vulnerability that comes with it, you know, there's such potential for revelation. That's what I find. And to like do it with as much joy and grace and like celebration and recognition of just how thin it all really is, you know? Yeah, I feel grateful to be right where I am right now with you.
Thank you. What a lovely note to end on. How did this go for you?
I was thinking about this before I came, that I really have always enjoyed our conversations, whether they're, you know, for the sake of other people or just for ourselves. And I've watched your evolution, and I've really enjoyed it. You know, I've really, because I think you've navigated it with a real sense of self and a real like understanding of how to make an influence in a way that is thoughtful and like engaging and intelligent. And I really appreciate that, and fun and funny and like unabashed, you know, and you've managed to really cultivate your own evolution. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here now in the studio instead of on Zoom. It really is much more enjoyable.
Agreed. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. The Pittsburghness of our connection.
There's something authentic about that. We know what that means.
Yeah.
You and I know what that means, and I think you and I both know what it means to carry that with us in the world.
Yes.
And we're not there. You know, it's Pittsburgh, I always say, is a wonderful place to grow up, but I knew I had to leave.
Yes.
You know?
Totally. And both things can be true. Yeah, and it's funny because I've now lived in New York for over half of my life. And so people sometimes will say like, oh, well, so do you identify as a New Yorker? And I always say like, I'll always identify as a Pittsburgher for a number of reasons, but mostly New York has enough New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need me. Pittsburgh, there's such pride in coming from this place and being able to be out here representing Pittsburgh outside of the boundaries of Pittsburgh.
It's a unique place in that I think it instills in people that come from there the desire to carry that little piece of them with them wherever they go.
Yes.
Whereas other places you come from and you want to divest yourself of it entirely. Pittsburgh has a very lovely quality about it that just kind of nestles itself into, you think about the people who are from Pittsburgh, you know? And it's to me, there's something really heartening about it. It's a wonderful place to come from, you know?
Yes, and you are one of the great people to come from Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Evan, thanks. It was as delightful as I'd hoped it would be.
You have a lot of things about you that I'm interested in that are deep.
Well, thanks. I do think that you are a person who is unique.